Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Inside Lowell podcast. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming to you from the WellPoint Studios here in downtown Lowell. WellPoint is the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. And we thank our friends at WellPoint for helping to make this podcast, all of our Inside Lowell podcasts possible. Along with the rest of our podcast sponsors, you'll see their logos scrolling on your screen there throughout. Washington Savings Bank, make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Boston North Company, business solutions for restaurant and retail. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to Greater Lowell since 1925. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on for more than 41 years. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City. And with that, I also want to thank my special guest for joining us here in studios. You probably recognize him. He was arguably the biggest local political celebrity in the Merrimack Valley for a period during the gas explosions in Lawrence, but he's gone on to a number of things since then, statewide roles, but now his newest role brings him back to Lowell, Massachusetts. He is the Interim Executive Director of the CBA, the Coalition for a Better Acre, the former mayor of Lawrence, Massachusetts, the former head of mass development, and he's our guest today here in the WellPoint Studios. Dan Rivera, thanks for being here, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Teddy. Teddy, it's really great to be here. I consider myself a Mill City kid, and so it's always nice to drive into downtown Lowell and see all the trappings of the old Mill City that is like Lawrence. So it's kind of like home. I really like it.
Yeah, is there a difference? I mean, obviously there's a difference between Lowell and Lawrence, but so many similarities, as we were talking about when you first came in, right? Old Mill City gateway cities, they all kind of have the same features.
They do. Ways. Beautiful downtowns. A group of people who live here who want to continue to focus on the greatness of the community, knowing that the assets are the people that live here. I think that Lawrence is the same way. Fall River, in my time at statewide, I've seen this beautiful sense of place. I'm a Laurentian, Lowellian. My favorite one is in Holyoke. They're Holyokers, and so it's just this thing that the people who came here when it first got established till today, the people who keep coming, have this incredible work ethic, and we want to make sure people appreciate us for that. And so it's a wonderful thing. We talked about local media. Every one of them had their own local paper that played a big role in everyday life. Back in Lawrence, and I'm sure it was the same way here. If you did something in Lawrence at 6 o'clock, you could be at the 10 o'clock paper, and everybody in the city would know about it. And then you could say something and maybe be back in an evening edition, or the next day you could respond. But today, everybody's in so many different places, is that lack of community is not there. But every community as a gateway city like Lowell, like Lawrence, like Fall River, Holyoke, and Springfield, I think there's a camaraderie there that I really love, and being here at Lowell makes it brings a little bit back to home for me.
It's funny whenever people talk about Lowell versus Lawrence, and it's usually done in a derogatory way with Lawrence, as you experienced during your time as mayor there. But I always caution the people of Lowell, don't think that you're necessarily better. Because I always say a quirk of immigration, the fact that Paul Tsongas's family came to Lowell instead of Lawrence, and he ended up becoming a United States senator, and the fact that the university happened to be in Lowell, and then Marty Meehan taking it over turned it into this giant, entity that's now worldwide, has worldwide renown. If not for a lot of those things, which a lot of it is fortune, Lowell and Lawrence might have reversed roles, right, today?
Yeah, and our stretch of the river is a lot straighter than yours. But what I will say is I used to take pride when I was mayor to say, I think we would love to be playing a supporting role to Lowell. Mm-hmm. It didn't get me any votes, trust me. But I always tell people, hey, whatever's good for Lowell is good for Lawrence. And I did lose my my Thanksgiving Day game against Lowell. It still hurts. We will never live that one down. But that's part of it. Like we had that back in the day, that rivalry. But for us to be the size, for Lawrence to be the size of Lowell, you would have to add Methuen and Andover. We are a lot, maybe not 100% of Andover. Andover's pretty big, but like a piece of each of them back in to get to be the size of you. So I always tell people, I don't know what you're talking about. First of all, more people live in Lowell than Lawrence. More people, they have more land than us, and they have different assets. So let's cheer for them, and we'll get some. I think there's always going to be enough on the plate for us too. And it ended up being like that. We partnered with a lot with stuff for Lowell here. And when I was mayor, I think there were 2 different city managers. I remember Eileen more than anyone, because she was with me during COVID and during the gas crisis. So she was really kind to us. But I always saw up the river, and Marty, I used to work in Marty Meehan's office. And so having UMass Lowell come partner with Lawrence all the time. So it's always I always like to tell people, we could talk like it's a competition, but Lowell's a little bit ahead of us, and it's okay. Lawrence will be there just fine. But
that teamwork thing you talked about is actually true, and especially today with so much of the economic development we're seeing, because we're the Merrimack Valley, and Lowell and Lawrence are the hubs. You throw kind of Haverhill in there as well, but in many ways you are competing with Boston and its suburbs, the greater Boston area, for a lot of the economic development dollars out there, and we're kind of positioned right now, based on the skyrocketing costs in Boston, to start to take advantage of some of these things, aren't we?
Yeah, 100%. And I think if you start from the basic point that Lowell, Greater Merrimack Valley, the workforce is here. So instead of everybody having to get in a car or getting on a train and going into Boston with this new work remote thing that's going on, people are going to stay here. And by the way, the housing prices, even though it's skyrocketed compared to what it used to be, it's still less expensive to live here than it is to live in Greater Boston. But you're right. It's why I think Link looked here. I think it's why Amazon went to North Andover. The workers are like right there. They have to travel very far, and that will always. It was the asset at the turn of the century, the turn of the last century. Sorry, I was born in 1970, so I'm ancient like everybody else. But it started with the workers, and I think that's what we have today is a place where workers live, and people are going to go to that.
So let's talk about the CBA. And first of all, how did that come about? Yunju Choi had announced her retirement after a successful tenure there. She really grew that organization into prominence. And they had this search going on. And I was hearing rumblings from behind the scenes that it may not have been going as they anticipated. They weren't getting the interest. I thought it was a pretty high-profile job that people would be beating down the door to get there. And I had heard they weren't. And then suddenly your name popped up. Was it simply a matter of timing being right and your departure from mass development?
100% serendipitous. Like, I loved the work that Youngju was doing. So I had a cabinet of CDC directors from across the Commonwealth. From Fitchburg to Roxbury, into Boston, Springfield. The CDCs are incredible organizations that can do really great for people's communities. And so I used to have 4 or 5 of them, 5 or 6 of them be in a kitchen cabinet for me. And Youngju was one of them. And I was just like, how blessed is this community to have somebody who's as smart and as dedicated as Youngju. And then when she told us how she was retiring to kind of go back and deal with some family stuff, I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen there? So I actually thought a bunch of people were the same thing. And so when I had the opportunity to leave mass development and they were still looking, I thought, oh, I would definitely be interested in it, because historically speaking, CBA is such a big deal in the Commonwealth nationally as well. And I think that gets lost sometimes in the conversation, like in the first project that took a HUD-run development, instead of letting private developers take it, they gave it to the tenants. That was the North Canal project that they did back in 87 or something like that. I love that stuff. And so I was like, I would love to come and be a part of this history. But it was 100% serendipitous. I didn't think it was going to be open when I got out. And then all of a sudden I found out it still is. And Patty Coffey at University of Massachusetts Lowell, and Sixto de Jesus, the chair, Zelma, who runs the Acre Child Care organization, all of them, we talked about it and it made sense. And so I think it's great. It's really, I did not expect to be a Lowell now, but I'm so happy that we are.
Well, I was excited when I saw your name pop up on the press release, and but I noticed the interim tag on there, and I remember having a conversation with somebody saying, you got Dan Rivera. You should be doing cartwheels that he's applied. Well, why just interim? I was told that, look, it was so late in the search process that they were going to kind of reboot it, but then you popped in and they figured, let's get him in and then let's kind of reevaluate.
Yeah, Teddy, what I'll tell you is I think that they were at that place that they were going to do an interimship, and because for transparency reasons, you don't want to pivot. That's like a big pivot. Oh, we're not looking for an interim anymore. We're going to do solid. I think a lot of people are involved in that. It's a community organization. There should be a lot of conversation. And so I think it was prudent for them to do that, and I'm happy to do it under those things. My contract is 6 to 9 months. But I think what's this turning out to be is more like we get to date, and we fall in love with each other, and maybe we'll have a marriage. But I think it's going great. And I think if you ask Sixto and the folks on the board, they'll tell you that it's been going great so far.
All right. And I actually did follow up with somebody who was very involved with the process. And I said, is the hope that he takes the job on a permanent basis? And the person said, I won't speak for anyone else. That is certainly my hope. So the $1 million question for you is it a position that you'd like to do on a permanent basis going forward?
I came back into public life because I wanted to help the Mill City I grew up in. And I think we did okay in the time that we were mayor, and then mass development. Charlie Baker gave me an opportunity to help other gateway cities, and this is just a continuation of that. I would love to do that. I think my wife liked it. I don't have to go to Springfield or Pittsfield or Fall River as often, but I think it's just a continuation of the work that I found to love, which is how do we make gateway cities like Lowell and Lawrence? How do we make them better every day? And here's the secret sauce is that it's already here. Like the people that are here, the institutions that are here, we just got to amplify them in the right way. And sometimes just get out of our own way. But I think it's something that absolutely I could grow old doing. Making sure that this mill brick doesn't go into the annals of history in a negative way. We're going to make sure that the state high.
All right. So for the decision makers out there in this process, I think Dan Rivera just said he might want to keep this job for a while, so might be worth considering. But let's talk a little bit about where you see the CBA today, but also where do you see it going should you have an opportunity to lead it for a long term? First of all, 6 to 9 month interimship, which is what I was told. Can you really implement your vision in that short of a time, or are you kind of spending your time now getting your feet wet, getting familiar with every aspect, and then making a proposal to them should that interview
I think it's a little bit of that. I think of it as just, again, the trains are still running, and so you got to make sure the trains are running on time, and making sure that the staff is, we have a great staff, dedicated, hardworking, and so we got to make sure that they get the support they need, ensuring that all the things that we're supposed to do gets done. So there's a lot of time spent doing that internally, and making sure that our friendships don't atrophy. We have so much goodwill across the city of Lowell for CBA that I don't want to make sure that doesn't go down. We have advocates from tenants and community members to, citywide agencies. The city itself, the city manager has been really great to me since I've been here. And so I have, and a lot of the political folks too. And so it's a lot of work just making sure we don't go backwards. And so I'm focusing on that. A little bit of it is as well as like, hey, how do we make this thing better? Small things now, large things now. I mean, I'm not fitting the place for drapes, so I'm trying to tell you, but I am definitely making sure that it functions right. And Young Jew left an incredible footprint that I have to make sure that we don't go back from. For the last 10 years, she grew the budget, she grew the programs, she made the real estate impact. I think I'm going to get this number before too long, but I'm pretty sure that the amount of real estate that CBA deals with across the portfolio, 556 units, almost 1,200 families, is one of the for a CDC of this nature, is one of the biggest portfolios in the Commonwealth.
Yeah. And it expands not just in the Acre, but throughout the rest of the city, in Dracut and in Haverhill. Do you continue to see that kind of growth going out into other communities?
I think, 𝙒𝙦𝙡𝙡𝙡𝙦 was genius in this concept, right? So if we're a big advocates for affordable housing and housing in general, my term is, and it's a term of the 70s, is housing by any means necessary, because that's, people are like, oh, so we should be just affordable housing. No, we got to build market rate housing too. Does that mean McMansions too? I mean, I don't care what they're building. Every time you build a unit of housing, it helps the fact that we're behind so many units of housing. And so if we helped Dracut take one of their buildings that will otherwise be falling down, historically redevelop it and put it housing for veterans, that's a great use. Tewksbury wants to do it, we're happy to do it in Tewksbury. Andover wants to do it, happy to do it in Andover. You need somebody to partner to navigate kind of the vagaries of what it is to get subsidies from the Commonwealth and the federal government around low-income tax credits, around housing dollars and support. All those things is kind of like a myriad of things that you have to do to get it off the ground. I always tell people say, oh, I can do something big there. But if you're looking for state support or federal support, you have to have the specialty to do that. And CBA stands ready to help other folks. So I do think that's going to happen more.
All right. We're chatting with Dan Rivera, the Interim Executive Director for the Coalition for a Better Acre, former head of Mass Development, and, of course, the former mayor of the city of Lawrence. He's joining us here in the WellPoint studios. You mentioned affordable housing. Talk to anybody. We just had a primary election. Everybody's number one issue, affordable housing. You hear it all over. It's the governor signing a huge housing bond bill.
$5 billion.
Everybody, on the federal level, everywhere, housing is an issue. How do you create, yes, all types of housing, but in particular, affordable housing, which for a neighborhood like the Acre, and by extension, a city like Lowell, which is kind of a city where people are coming when they're first getting their feet wet in the country or in, or in a gateway city. How do you create affordable housing in 2024, given the realities of the markets today?
So I think it's, I don't know if you're a baseball fan or not.
Of course.
It's small ball. I think that there is always such a negative reaction. Somebody says, we're going to build 150 units of housing and 250 units of housing. Those will come in places that they should come. I was always an advocate for housing at Devon's. And so that stuff is moving. I think that's in places where you can do that without having, so much dissent and problems with it, you should do it. But places like gateway cities, it's small ball. It's, can you do 20 units? Can you do 15 units? And so you start with that first piece. It's got to be small. The second piece has got to be a local developer. Well, does the local developer, it doesn't matter. You have to have a local developer. Maybe the guy who owns the bodega for 20 years has enough money in the bank to buy a 9-unit, a 16-unit piece of property and develop it for market rate or for affordable housing. And then you got to have a local lender. Enterprise has been great, a big supporter of CBAs. And so an Enterprise or an Eastern, Lowell 5, because the guy banks or the woman banks with, for the small business, bank with that bank, they have this relationship. They're like, okay, I'll take a little bit of a risk. It makes, they use this term, sharpen the pencil, makes it easier to sharpen the pencil when all that guy's deposits, all that business's deposit are in your bank. They're not going anywhere. And they support that. And then there's this little gap. It's like the ends aren't meeting. They can see each other, but they can't meet. And I think that that's the role that the state and the city plays with home funds and CPA dollars, some grants, and the same thing with the state and the federal government, some tax credits, some grants. It makes it work. It's this recipe. There are going to be a place in this world for the big things like that wind development and Trinity do. It's going to be multi-unit, huge things. But small ball is the way you get it done because, if I own the bodega for 15 years, everybody knows me, they know where I'm at, and I go try to build some monstrosity or I don't take care of that property, they're going to know where to find me. Some guy from New York comes in with, a plan for 150 things. First of all, I don't know him. Where does he live? Does he know Lowell? Those type of things. That's why being a community development corporation is really important because we have a connection to people. And so small ball. a local developer, a local bank, you know, and have it and make sure that the project meets, what do you call it, the needs of that neighborhood. You get it done.
And how do you see the role of the CBA in that, the local person, the local bank? In many of the projects that that the CBA has done recently, I almost saw them as kind of the leader.
Yeah.
They were kind of pulling everybody else along. Is that the proper role that you see as
100%.
well?
I mean, you know, CDCs and community development corporations play the role of Mission Impossible. When everybody asks you, oh my God, they paid so much money for that, or it took so much money to redevelop it, it's because the market has given up on that property. What I described to you earlier was how the market can do affordable housing in places like Lowell, by having that recipe of the local developer and stuff. What CDCs can do is buildings that otherwise the market cannot figure out how to do. CDCs can come in and say, you know what? This property needs to be redeveloped. And unfortunately, but this is, I think you maybe understand this more than other people, there's this thing called the public good. And so sometimes the public good means we're going to pay a little bit more for the property. It's going to cost us a little bit more to do it because otherwise the market's just not doing it. So everybody's like, oh my God, I could do a unit for $250,000 a unit, right? And then they see the developers the nonprofit developers doing it for $300,000, $400,000. We only have to do that because the market's just not doing it. But in the end, what we're going to get is the housing that otherwise would not have been there. And it means more to the public sector, the neighborhood, to have that building be redeveloped. So we have to drag people across the finish line. Please sell us the property, or please give us the property as low as possible, and then go out there and build a capital stack every day. But it is 100% leading in those places, Mission Impossible, where otherwise nothing is happening. And then when you get it, and then people say, well, I could have done it. Well, market has, anytime the market wants to step in and buy it for market rate, it's there. The reality is that it doesn't pencil out for them.
And that's, you know, for folks who might not understand that and question it, I don't know how familiar you are with the old St. Peter's Church in Lowell, but it's a property that I believe the CBA developed right across the street from a now vacant courthouse on Gorham Street. And I remember there was a huge controversy about tearing down that church. It was a historic structure, and they really had to move heaven and earth to do it, but they did. And then they put up a beautiful building that is housing. And as you said, no private developer is going to tackle that because they don't want to deal with the headaches of, you know, the historic church and, you know, the political fallout, the business fallout of taking that down. Were it not for, you know, government entities and the Coalition for Better Acre, that you're an old broken down church sitting across the street from an old broken down courtroom that nobody wants right now either.
And then somebody redeveloped the building next door to it. I think it's where the Acre Child Care Center is at too. So you get this like amplification that happens. People count the benefit you get. People count how much it costs to create these things, but they forget to count the benefits, tax roll benefits. You know, CBA is one of the leading taxpayers in the city, and the other credit is you don't have as many calls from police. You don't have many calls for fire. Like, so people think, oh well, you got kids and families in there. It's going to be an impact. First of all those people are already here. Right. You're living in different places, but you create a better place to land. It just beautifies the area. So yeah, it's Mission Impossible. At some point, someone's going to bring the Mission Impossible. It's going to be the courthouse next. I mean, something has to happen with that. I'm not saying it's going to be housing. I'm just saying it matters more to us and to the community in Lowell that these things get fixed. That something comes of it. The marketplace just haven't figured out a way to do it to make money at it. So it does end up on the backs of the local governments, city and state, regional, to play, and philanthropy to play a role.
Have you had time to dig into the Smith Baker Center, which is this beautiful structure sitting right across from Lowell City Hall and the library? And at one point, the CBA had a plan to try to develop it, and you know, then COVID struck and everything kind of fell through. Have you had a chance to delve into that? There's a lot of talk at City Hall about tearing it down. A couple of months ago, there was a vote on whether to tear it down, and Manager Golden convinced the council to give him a little bit of an extra window to try to see if he can, you know, throw one last Hail Mary and develop it.
I've only heard the stuff that you just talked about, and I think it's a slate roof, right? Slate roof.
which is falling, and they've closed off the sidewalk.
We have a bunch of those in every gateway city. Again, we talked about things in every gateway city. There's these beautiful churches with slate roofs and all this stuff. No, I think he's right to try to save it, get some. I do have a secret recipe on bringing back downtowns. I don't want you to tell anybody.
Okay.
I mean, it's a very secret, and it's it's MIT, Harvard, NASA. Everybody said this is a good idea. You got to build housing downtown. That's a secret. People live here. Guess where they go? Downstairs for the coffee. People are afraid, like, well, if I do away with all my businesses from first floor, first floor will always maintain businesses. They're not really, they're not zoned to make them. The second, third, fourth, fifth floors, you make them where people live. They're going to come downstairs at night. They're going to come down. It becomes creative. And we are so used to the old paradigm, which is downtown is a business district. Right. Even in Boston, the business districts have housing above. And Menino came up with this, it's above and back streets. Everybody's talking about main streets. He started talking about back streets. And we have this stuff here in Lowell and in Lawrence, in gateway cities across. But you have to get people to live down here. And so if he could put 20 people in that building, that's 20 more people that live downtown. And every building should be looking at themselves and saying, can I build any bit of housing? 2 or 3 units of artist lofts. That's housing, and there's some subsidies for that. So I think that's the I don't know the particulars of it, but like I said, every neighbor, every community has one of these things, and you should strive always to do the highest and best use. And it costs so much to knock it down that instead of spending the money knocking it down and creating a blank space, could you find something for reuse? But if you're going to knock it down, you better put people in it, because honestly, you want that impact in your downtown.
Small ball, get a lot of runners on base.
Small ball.
But then the cleanup hitter comes and hits it out of the park. You mentioned Link. A lot of development. Just this morning, UMass Lowell released yet another partner that's coming into that. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank on the name, and I reported the story. Bioversity or something, I believe, is coming in there. It's an organization that trains people in life sciences for jobs. So another component there. But I'm hearing there's more coming. One way or another, it's an $800 million development. It's kind of, call it the Acre, call it downtown, call it both. It's eventually going to affect the Acre and the downtown and the entire city. How do you piggyback on that? Is there a role for you and the CBA to piggyback on that? Because eventually it's going to spill out into the rest of the city. The word that I keep hearing over and over is spillover.
Yeah. And you should hear that term in a positive way. Like,
correct.
I think of it maybe halo effect, right? Like you're going to have this halo effect. We're going to be doing on the North Canal project, and it's that historic development. We have to do some infrastructure work there while they're building that out the Link project. And so we see it as a win-win. The chancellor's been a great partner to date, and so the moment I got here, she sent me an email. We're supposed to get together. I see her and the President Meehan's vision about this. I think it's going to be great. But as always, and my friend Dave will let you know. He's going to be watching. So we're going to be supporting that piece of it as long as it's really not, has this the voice of the community there. And I think that that's all they're going to do is make sure that the people of the Acre aren't really going to be in the shadow of this thing, that they could benefit from it too. And I really, we're going to be there with them every step. Yeah,
it sounds like the job development opportunities might be there, especially with training such a big part of it, but also the housing. If people are going to want to be able to walk to work over there, there's some housing components, but I don't think enough for 2,000 new workers. Naturally, again, downtown and the Acre is where they're going to want to start looking. Right?
Yeah, and again, I'm going to be out to the NEMCOG's annual meeting. I'm going to be talking on a panel with some folks, and I'm going to be telling people, hey, the number one way, if you're a greater Lowell community, to get the halo effect of this is to build housing. Build housing there, because the managers of these places are going to want to be closer to this development. The workers will be in the Acre and in places around in the city of Lowell, and some of them may not find the places. So you better get there. That's a guaranteed way to get some of that is to grow the housing. But I think that we see a positive path for housing and for the acre with this project.
All right, Dan Rivera, Interim Executive Director of the CBA. I won't lobby for you to get the job full time because they'll probably, shoot you down if they know that I'm backing you. But, we're glad to have you here. Somebody with your background, your experience, I think could benefit the organization. Certainly short term, but long term would be great as well. So thanks for coming in and sharing your thoughts.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you to Dan Rivera, and thank you for joining us here as well for our latest Inside Lowell podcast. As we like to say, Inside Lowell. If Lowell is your home, this is your place. Till next time in the WellPoint Studios, stay safe, everybody.